wish I knew what I know now. Wisdom is the principal thing. All this time just wasted thinking I own anything. Humility clothes me from the top of my head, soles of my feet, yeah. Teach me, teach me, show me the way. Hide my face from the wickedness of this world, I pray. Take my hand, protect my heart, hide me in the shadow of your wing. Like a child, see purity in my eyes. Allow me to sit at your feet. Hear me, hear me. Show me your ways, teach me your paths. I'm yielding to your will. Your loving commitment will endow me, surround me in my coming and my going. Cleanse me, purge me, I want to be white as snow, so I may testify of your love to those in search of you. Show me the way. You desire truth, the inward parts you make me know you. Take my hand, casting all my cares, refresh me with the waters of life. Like a child crying softly, forgive me. Allow me to approach your throne. Know me, yeah. Know me. Have mercy upon me, O Elohim, according to your loving kindness. According unto the multitude of your tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin. For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against you, you only, have I sinned, and done this evil in your sight, that you might be justified when you speak, and be clear when you judge. Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Behold, you desire truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part you shall make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me to hear joy and gladness, that the bones which you have broken may rejoice. Hide your face from my sins, and blot out all mine iniquities. Create in me a clean heart, O Elohim, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. Restore unto me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with your free spirit. Then will I teach transgressors your ways, and sinners shall be converted unto you. Deliver me from blood guiltiness, O Elohim, the Elohim of my salvation, and my tongue shall sing aloud of your righteousness. O Yahuwah, open up my lips, and my mouth shall show forth your praise. For you desire not sacrifice, else I would give it. You delight not in burnt offering. The sacrifices of Elohim are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart. O Elohim, you will not despise. Do good in your good pleasure unto Zion. Build you the walls of Jerusalem. Then shall you be pleased with the sacrifices of righteousness, with burnt offering and whole burnt offering. Then shall they offer bullocks upon thine altar.
Deuteronomy 28. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Most High thy power, to observe and do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Most High God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. But if thou wilt not hearken to the voice of the Most High, to observe and do all his commandments, then curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
All these lies and delusions, wake me up, show me a new dawn. Open your eyes, rise, children of light. I am awakened, I am awakened.
Seek out the ways of the heathen to make a covenant with Satan's government. Turn their face away from the Most High, evil desire. 2 Kings 17 said they passed their sons and daughters through the fire. They begin cutting divine spiritual ties, clinging to the heathen lies. Evil spirits bind, breaking souls, breaking spirits, ripping flesh, breaking minds. Running from the Most High wrath on the blood-stained path. 70 AD, Israelites fall. The Most High's chosen seed go into captivity. Hebrew Israelites watch nations rise. They watch nations fall. 4 beasts, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. We pray for the fall of the 4th beast. Under the iron foot of Rome, we long to go home. A hopeless nation lies dead in the valley of the dry bones. Simulation of Shemites to Hamite clones. Israelites roam.
All these lies and delusions, wake me up, show me a new dawn. Open your eyes, rise, children of light. I am awakened, I am awakened.
To build a wicked nation, no true identity, only tribulations. Fed scraps of swine, we eat the worst of the animal kind. Used, confused, they set us in high places to be abused. Control the tribe, control the tribe. Our leaders take bribes to continue the lies. 4 beasts behind the scene in the skies, watching with the all-seeing eye. The heathen take flight into a new world order. Hebrews, sleepwalking into a wicked system that's gonna fall. Awake, reject Babylon. Hear the of awakening throughout the day and night. Awake, the Most High's people, the Israelites. The earth has swallowed the flood of deception. The harvest ripe for collection. His people are walking, standing like a mighty army. The Most High has summoned, the Hebrews are coming. Awake, come out of captivity. Awake, you who sleep. Arise, receive the Most High's laws and commandments. We are the Israelites.
In my mind, all these lies and delusions. Wake me up, show me a new dawn. Open your eyes, rise, children of light. I am awakened, I am awakened. Clear my mind and my soul. Gave me a new mind. Oh, made me whole. I rise up.
Quam.
I'll be a new light.
Quam.
I am awakened.
Quam.
I am awakened.
Quam. Yes, you are.
I am awakened. All these lies and delusions. Wake me up. Show me a new dawn. Open your eyes, rise, children of light. I am awakened. I am awakened. Israelite's journey.
All right, shalom, 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 Israel, shalom,
Shalom.
All praises to the Most High for this Sabbath day, and I always want to give glory and thanks to the Most High and to His Son, the King, Yahushua Hamashiach, the true King and ruler of this universe, and to all the faithful and chosen elect of the Most High. We give praise and glory, and that we continue to glorify the Most High in these last and evil days. So today's subject we want to touch on is who was the king that knew not Joseph. This is a very explosive subject because most historians, archaeologists, and biblical researchers don't touch on that subject, who the king was. And even in the Bible, it doesn't state who the king that knew not Joseph was. So you have to go into extensive history of the Egyptian dynasty and rulership when the Egyptian ruled that particular dynasty, which was the 18th dynasty of Egypt. And when we research the history, we'll see that that 18th dynasty is where the vast majority of those rulers came from. All right, so that's going to be today's subject. But before we start our class, like as usual, we're always going to give our readers Psalms to glorify the Most High and His words and His truth, and that His truth always will be in us to continue bringing forth His truth and His wisdom, His knowledge and understanding, because this wisdom and knowledge is not ours. It belongs to the Most High, right? And it belongs to all Israel, not just one particular Israelite have a monopoly on the Most High truth. The Most High truth is spread out to all Israel, right? Because the Most High truth, one man or one people can't contain the Most High truth. The Most High is too vast. So the Most High spreads out His truth to all bodies, right? With different bodies of this manifestation that the Most High is bringing forth. Yes, some might have more truth than some, but the Most High extends His truth to all Israelites, right? even those that are non-Messianic. Okay, that might be that, but yeah, some of the non-Messianic have knowledge and wisdom of the Most High too. Can't exclude them. All right, so let's jump. Go into the book of Psalm 62, beginning with the first verse. All right, sure. Psalm 62 and 1.
Psalm chapter 62 and verse 1. Truly my soul waiteth upon Yahweh. From him cometh my salvation.
Right, so this is what David is saying, and this is what we all have to say. Truly my soul waiteth upon the Most High. From him cometh my salvation. Our salvation is going to come from the Most High through his son Yahushua HaMashiach and the angels that he's going to send to bring our salvation. Continue.
He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be greatly moved.
See, and David is putting that confidence in the Most High. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be greatly moved. Once you stand in the foundation of the Most High, you shall not be moved. And that's what all Israelites should stand upon, that foundation. The foundation of the Most High. He's our rock. Continue.
How long will ye imagine mischief against a man? Ye shall be slain, all of you. As a bowing wall shall ye be, and as a tottering fence.
That goes for the enemies of our people, all right? Our natural enemies, and anybody that's against the truth of the Most High. I see there's a lot of people opposing the Most High's truth and trying to deny that we're not the Israelites, but going to give refuge and sanction to the enemy. The Most High is going to destroy you people out there that's doing that. Continue playing with the Most High. Continue trying to fight against the Most High word and the truth as to who the Israelites are. And you're fighting a losing battle. Continue.
Verse 4. They only consult to cast him down from his excellence.
And that's what the nations, the rulers, the elites, and all the enemies of the Most High, they only consult to cast him down from his excellency. And that's referring to us as a people. Continue.
They delight in lies.
Yeah, they delight in lies. A lot of scholars and historians, they delight in lies, in oppressing and omitting the truth of the Israelites in Egypt. They try to oppress and deny that history. Continue.
They bless with their mouth, but they curse inwardly.
That goes for the elite rulers in society. They bless with their mouth, but they curse us inwardly. All right, and how do they do that? Well, we like to thank God. We know that you do, but inwardly they're cursing us. They don't have no intentions for us. That goes for the Pope too. Comes out, ho, 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 bless be God, believe God. But he's cursing the people inwardly. Continue.
Selah. Verse 5. My soul, wait thou only upon Yahweh, for my expectation is from him.
See, and our expectation is from the Most High. My soul is waiting upon the Most High. Continue.
He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be moved.
See, and David repeat this a second time again to validate what he's saying and what the Most High is going to do. Continue.
Then Yahweh is my salvation and my glory, the rock of my strength, and my refuge is in Yahweh.
And that's what it's going to come down to in these last days. We're going to find out that the Most High is our rock and our refuge in these last days. Hold that real quick and go to Jeremiah, the 16th chapter. I want to show you something because this goes almost in parallel to the book of Jeremiah, the 16th chapter, where the Most High said, the Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, our fathers have inherited lies and vanity and things wherein there is no truth. Jeremiah 16, and start here from start from 16 and start from 17 verse.
Jeremiah chapter 16 and verse 17. For mine eyes are upon all their ways. They are not hid from my face.
Speaking about us as a people. Continue.
Neither is their iniquity hid from mine eyes. And first I will recompense their iniquity and their sin double, because they have defiled my land.
That's what we did. We defiled the Most High land in our abominations, serving idols, serving different gods, Continue.
They have filled mine inheritance with the carcasses of their detestable and abominable things. O Yahweh, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction, the Gentiles shall come upon thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit.
And this is going to come to pass in the latter days that we're living in. All right? That the Gentiles are going to come unto us and say, surely our fathers have inherited lies and vanity and things wherein there is no profit. They're going to find out all that they've been taught in this society by their collegiate, academia, institutions were all based on lies because of their ruling elites that taught them these lies. Go back to Psalms, the 62nd chapter.
Psalms chapter 62 and verse 8. Trust in him at all times.
See what David is saying? Trust in the Most High at all times. Trust in the Most High at all times. Continue.
Ye people.
Ye people. Continue.
Pour out your heart before him. Yahweh is a refuge for us. Selah.
See? And David continues saying the Most High is a refuge for us. The Most High is going to be our refuge in these last and few days left in this wicked kingdom. Because all hell is going to break down in this society. Okay? They're already saying that Russia is going to cut off the fuel from Europe, and that's going to create a hell of a crisis. Okay? Macron said in France, they're going to turn off the street lights in France to save energy. Because Russia is going to cut off that fuel. Okay? And once Russia finally cuts off that fuel, it's going to be an all-out anarchy. See what's happening in Sri Lanka already? The people in Sri Lanka is protesting. They took over the presidential house, man. Because there's no fuel, food shortages. It's going crazy over in those countries, man. And it's going to hit America too. I don't think it's not going to hit America. It tells you the Most High said they should not regard their kings nor their princes. Okay? With all these shortages, food, it's gonna be every man for himself. Okay, and it's coming. The Most High is gonna bring this. The Most High said, when this happened, it said man's heart is gonna fail them for fear for what's coming upon this earth. You're gonna die of heart attacks for what the Most High is gonna bring upon this earth. Continue.
Verse 9. Surely men of low degree are vanity.
See, men of low degree are vanity. Continue.
And men of high degree are a lie.
And men of high degree, which are the elite, the rulers, they're a bunch of liars. They lie against the Most High, against his truth, and against his people. Continue.
To be laid in the balance, they are altogether lighter than vanity.
See, when you put them together in a balance, they're nothing. And when they're all said and done to be compared and to be judged properly, they're nothing. Continue.
Trust not in oppression.
See, trust not in oppression. Continue.
And become not vain in robbery.
And don't become vain in robbery. Continue.
If riches increase, set not your heart upon them. Yahweh hath spoken once. Twice have I heard this, that power belongeth unto Yahweh.
See, that power belongeth unto the Most High. Power belongs to the Most High. Continue.
Also unto thee, O Adawan, belongeth mercy. For thou renderest to every man according to his work.
Right. And also unto the Most High belongeth mercy, for thou renderest to every man according to his work. And that's what the Most High does. Hallelujah. All right. So we're going to move on to our subject. All right. To prove a point. There's a lot of history involved in us being in Egypt and the things that took place in Egypt. So I'm going to start off reading some historical points. Then we're going to go into the Bible, because what we have to understand and acknowledge, while we were in Egypt, and Joseph was down in Egypt, Joseph was a governor in Egypt, a ruler in Egypt. And while he was that ruler in Egypt, he was under the kingdom of a group of people called the Hyksos. I don't know if they ever taught that history in school or not, but the Hyksos were rulers, what you Egyptian call foreign rulers of Egypt. They took over Egypt. And we're going to read that history about that. So let's read about it. I want you, Shad, to read this here for me. Okay, this book is called World History. Okay, it's called World History. I'm going to use different sources and historical records, all right? And this was written by MacDougall Littell. Okay, and this is on page 83. Let you Shad to read all of this right here, Shad. Okay.
The book is World History, page 83. The New Kingdom of Egypt.
Right. So, when the Hyksos were expelled from Egypt, there was a pharaoh that came up from the 17th dynasty of Egypt. It was called the Thebes Dynasty, which was in Upper Egypt. When this pharaoh, Ammuz, expelled the Hyksos, and he initiated his new kingdom, which became the 18th dynasty of Egypt. It was also called the New Kingdom, because Egypt was expelling foreign rulers out of Egypt, and they was taking back over the throne of Egypt. They said, we're tired of this. We're tired of having these foreign rulers rule over us. So those foreign rulers were called Hyksos. Okay? And the Josephus calls them shepherd kings. But the Egyptian called them foreign rulers that ruled Egypt for a lengthy period of time. Some historians got 100 years, some got 150. All right? So continue reading your Shire.
The New Kingdom of Egypt. After the prosperity of the Middle Kingdom, Egypt descended into war and violence.
Right. So that's what Egypt descended into, war and violence. They were rivaling, fighting amongst themselves. They couldn't keep control over Egypt for a period of time. That happened in every kingdom. Every kingdom you have that. When a kingdom is going through changes or it's coming to an end. And this is going to happen in America, where you're going to have the political parties. It's going to be in adverse to one another. You're going to have the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And what caused that? January 6th caused that division. And it's brewing more now. Okay? America will never be united again politically. It's at the end of its rulership. And it's going to get worse. Continue.
This was caused by a succession of weak pharaohs and power struggles among rival nobles.
See what it's caused by? Read it again.
This was caused by a succession of weak pharaohs and power struggles among rival nobles.
See? Power struggle. Continue.
The weakened country fell to invaders who swept across the isthmus of the Suez in chariots.
So the Hyksos came in with chariots, advanced chariots that the Egyptians never used or had before. So the Hyksos brought advanced chariots into Egypt. They brought advanced weapons, the bow, the sickle. They brought advanced technology into Egypt. So like people can say, yeah, Egypt was great. Yeah, Egypt was great. But Egypt was just like America. You had where different cultures brought technologies, ideas into this country, just like ancient Egypt. You had different cultures that brought ideas, technology into Egypt. Egypt was like a melting pot. Okay, continue.
A weapon of war unknown to the Egyptians.
See what it says? Weapons of war unknown to the Egyptians. That shook the Egyptians up when they saw what the Hyksos brought into Egypt. All right. Now, a lot of historians will tell you the Hyksos were a Shemitic people, right? They'll say they were Shemitic people, but yet they'll say they were Amorites. Amorites are not Shemitic people. Some will say they are Canaanites, right? But I partly believe that they were Canaanites too, right? But I also believe too they were Shemitic people. I tend to believe that they were Shemitic people because they didn't dress like the Egyptians. They wore beards. They didn't wear the regular custom garments of the Egyptian. They came in wearing different outfit, colorful garments, had beards. Right? The Egyptians were known for wearing what? Their white cotton garments. But eventually, they took on Egyptian culture while it was down in Egypt. Continue.
These invaders, nomads called Hyksos.
See, nomads called Hyksos, foreign rulers of Egypt. Continue.
Ruled Egypt from 1640 to 1570 BC.
So see what they're saying? That's 70 years, but it's more than 70 years. They ruled Egypt for more than 70 years. Because they ruled for the entire time that Joseph was down to Egypt. Right? And Joseph died before the Hyksos got expelled. When Joseph died, the Hyksos were still ruling Egypt. Continue.
The Hyksos invasion shook the Egyptians' confidence in the desert barriers that had protected their kingdom.
See what it did? It shook them up. It shook Egypt up. They couldn't believe that a group of foreign invaders came and took over Egypt and ruled over Egypt. Continue.
Around 1600 BC, a series of warlike rulers began to restore Egypt's power. Among those who helped drive out the Hyksos was Queen H.O.D.C.
That was Amu's mother. Okay, so you had Amu's brother, also Kamuz, that fought against the Hyksos, but he lost. So Amuz took over the reign and finally expelled the Hyksos out of Egypt. And he pushed them where? Into Palestine. Continue.
The queen took over when her husband died in battle. The next pharaoh, Khafmos, won a great victory over the hated Hyksos. His successors drove the Hyksos completely out of Egypt and pursued them across the Sinai Peninsula into Palestine.
See, into Palestine. That's where he drove them, into Palestine. Now, why would he drag them into Palestine? Because they were not the true native Egyptians of that land. They probably came from that area of the land before we took the land. So more likely, they probably were Canaanites. Now, some said they're Shemitic. All right? So it's a toss-up between whether they're Canaanites or whether they're Shemitic. Continue.
After overthrowing the Hyksos rulers, the pharaohs of the new kingdom, about 1570 to 1075 BC, sought to strengthen Egypt by building an empire.
See, so after they expelled the Hyksos, they start to strengthen up Egypt and to build up Egypt again. Continue.
Egypt now entered its third period of glory in the new kingdom.
See, it was called the New Kingdom. That New Kingdom is called the 18th Dynasty of Egypt, also known as the Golden Age of Egypt. It became one of the most prosperous time in Egypt. Why did it become one of the most prosperous time? Who could tell me why? Why did that 18th dynasty become one of the most prosperous dynasty? Why? Y'all know, y'all not just thinking hard enough. Why did the 18th dynasty become one of the most prosperous dynasty? Remember I told y'all, Israel was enslaved in what? The 18th dynasty of Egypt. Wherever kingdom we served slavery in, what happened? Every kingdom became successful and great. Go check it out. Every kingdom that Israel served slavery in, that nation became great and powerful. If we wasn't here as a people enslaved in this country, you think America would have been great and powerful? Hell no. It's because that we're here. So that became the most prosperous and successful rulership of the Egyptian, that 18th dynasty known as the New Kingdom. Read it again, Yeshaya.
After overthrowing the Hyksos rulers, the pharaohs of the new kingdom, about 1570 to 1075 BC, sought to strengthen Egypt by building an empire. Egypt now entered its third period of glory in the new kingdom. During this time, it was wealthier and more powerful than ever before.
Y'all heard that? It was more wealthier and powerful than ever before. There's more to it?
No, stop.
That was it? Okay. So now, okay, I'm going to show you a good bit of reading, and we go into scripture and show you to validate how we come to the conclusion that the king that knew not Joseph was Amenhotep the first. All right, because Ammuz pushed out the Hyksos. He got them out of Egypt. Then his son came in after he died and took over. All right, so read this here to your chart. Go over here. Read this part here, page 39. Read this right here, and then we're going back to page 84.
This is the same book, World History, page 39, Chariot Riders Invade Egypt, second paragraph. The prosperity of the Middle Kingdom did not last. In about 1640 BC.
So the Middle Kingdom is where Ammuz came from. Excuse me. Now, he came from Upper Egypt. The Middle Kingdom was a part right between the Upper and Lower Kingdom. Continue.
A group of Asian nomads swept across the Isthmus of Suez into Egypt in horse-drawn chariots. These chariot riders were called the Hyksos.
Right, so these chariot riders were called the Hyksos. Continue.
Which meant the rulers of the uplands. The Hyksos ruled much of Egypt from 1640 to 1570 BC. This 70-year period is sometimes called the Second Intermediate Period. Egypt fell to the Hyksos at roughly the same time other nomads were invading Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley, farther to the east. But Egypt would rise again for a new period of power and glory, the New Kingdom, which is discussed in chapter 4.
Right, so that's the new kingdom now called the 18th dynasty. Now let's go back to page 84, right? And read, start from here. Yeah. Right, start from here. And read down to, read this here. Then we're going to jump down to this part right here. So read all of this right here, and then jump down to here. Then we go into the scriptures.
Page 84.
So it's a good bit of reading, but I'm trying to build up the case to show you, so we can understand when you read the Bible, because the Bible doesn't give you every detailed history. It only outlines certain points of historical events. So to get other references, you have to go to other historical facts to link up and match and show what the Bible is really talking about. Okay? Because, let me give you an example. When Daniel spoke about the four beasts that rule the earth, did he go into the full detailed historical facts about those four beasts? No, he gave you a brief outline. Okay? So you have to link up the other historical records to match the Bible. Just like when you read in Exodus, the first chapter, when he says there was a new king that knew not Joseph, you have to find out the timeline, what happened during that time period. And that's what I'm trying to show you right now. So I'm linking up and building up to that point to show you. Okay, continue.
Hatshepsut's stepson, Thutmose III, proved to be a much more warlike ruler.
Okay, so Thutmose III. This was also another pharaoh in Egypt. He came after Ammuz. You had Thutmose I, Thutmose II, and Thutmose III. Okay, now Thutmose I, this is where Moses' name came from. Okay, when the queen of Egypt found Moses in the Nile, when she took him dry from the Nile, she called his name Moses after her father. Her father was Thutmose I. Okay, that's where Moses' name came from. Moses didn't have a Hebrew name. Why? Why didn't Moses have a Hebrew name? Who could tell me why?
He grew up as a pharaoh, as an Egyptian.
Right. He was born in Egypt and he grew up as an Egyptian and he was raised by the Egyptian family. So more likely, he's going to have what? An Egyptian name. Okay? Continue. Go ahead.
Thutmose III proved to be a much more warlike ruler. In fact, in his eagerness to ascend to the throne, Thutmose III may even have murdered his stepmother, H.O.D.C.
Right. So that's what they're saying. He probably murdered his stepmother. I won't put it past the Egyptians, because when he reigned, he defaced all of her images and records out of Egypt. He destroyed everything. He said, because what she did, she usurped the throne of Egypt, and she became a female pharaoh. Dressed up like a man, put on fake beard, okay, and was ruling over Egypt. And he said, what? When he came to power, he said, deface her, take it down. All right, so I won't put it past him that he killed her. Continue.
Between the time he took power and his death around 1425 BC, Thutmose III led a number of victorious invasions into Palestine and Syria.
Right. They said he was one of the, that period, he was one of the most well-favored conquerors during that time period. It said he had 17 annual campaigns into the Levant. But they said the 18th one, he didn't make it because his army was decimated. And more likely, he was the pharaoh of the Exodus, Thutmose III. He had 17 annual campaigns into the land of Canaan and the Levant. But it said he didn't make the 18th campaign because his army was decimated. All right, continue.
Under Thutmose's rule, Egyptian armies also pushed farther into South Nubia.
See, so under Thutmose, beginning with Thutmose I, all right, beginning with his grandson, they were taking over, warring, and fighting against Nubia and Ethiopia. And when you read in the Josephus, Moses was a general in the Egyptian army fighting against who? Yeah, I got to read a Josephus. If you have a Josephus, go get a Josephus and read about Moses when he was in the Egyptian army as a general. He was fighting against the Ethiopians. And that's the period of time from Thutmose to Thutmose III, when Egypt was gaining strongholds into Nubia, taking down Nubia and all surrounding kingdoms. That was the beginning of Egypt's mightiest power to rule the 18th dynasty. That's why we said earlier, the 18th dynasty became one of the most wealthiest and most powerfulest dynasties ever. So Thutmose was a well-known conqueror. Thutmose III. Read that part again, Yeshaya.
Thutmose III led a number of victorious invasions into Palestine and Syria. Under Thutmose's rule, Egyptian armies also pushed farther into South Nubia.
So they pushed further south down into Nubia. All right, continue.
A region of Africa that straddled the upper Nile River. From the Blue Nile, the southern boundary of Nubia, to the shores of the Mediterranean was a distance of approximately 1,000 miles.
Right. See that? So from the point for where Nubia is to up to the Mediterranean Sea is of 1,000 miles. That's a lot of land to cover. Okay? They said if you had to send a message or an embassy, it would take you at least a month to get from one part of that country to another part. So if you came from the upper part of Egypt to go to the lower part, it would take you at least a month. Okay? Continue.
From Nubia, Egyptian soldiers returned carrying gold.
See, so Egyptians returned from Nubia carrying gold, because that's where the Egyptians got their gold from Nubia. All right? And the Egyptian word for gold is Nub, N-U-B. That's where the word Nubia came from. The Egyptian word for gold is Nub. So they call them Nubian. All right? Continue.
Egyptian soldiers returned carrying gold, cattle,
go ahead,
ivory, and many captives.
Slaves. Put it like that. Slaves from down in Ethiopia and Nubia. Continue.
Whom they enslaved.
And they also enslaved them while we were in the 18th dynasty. Continue.
The destinies of Egypt and Nubia would be connected for hundreds of years. Egypt was now a mighty empire.
See, Egypt was now a mighty empire. Mighty. That's why the Most High told Moses, you go to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh, I'm going to bring you down. He said, for this purpose have I raised thee up, that my name might be declared all throughout the face of the earth. Because nobody was mightier than the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was the ultimate god of Egypt. He rules and called all the shots. Whatever he said, it went down. If you disobeyed what he said, you were gone. Continue.
It controlled lands around the Nile and far beyond. In addition, it drew boundless wealth from them.
See? And Egypt drew boundless wealth from all these surrounding countries. All right? Egypt was just like America. The same thing. It was what you call a empire that rules over nations today? It's called what? What's the term they use? Not so much a dictatorship, but it's another term they use. When a kingdom rules over vast countries and have great wealth and power. That too. It's another name they use to, guys, I lost it right back in my mind. It's gonna come back to me though. Wow, that quick is it. No, not proxy government. I lost. It's gonna come back to me. Go ahead.
Continue.
Go ahead.
Egypt was now a mighty empire. It controlled lands around the Nile and far beyond. In addition, it drew boundless wealth from them. Contact with other cultures brought Egypt new ideas as well as material goods.
See what it says? Read that part again.
In addition, it drew boundless wealth from them. Contact with other cultures.
It says contact with other cultures
brought Egypt new ideas.
It brought Egypt new ideas. Go ahead.
As well as material goods.
As well as material goods. Continue.
Egypt had never before, nor has it since, commanded such power and wealth as during the reigns of the new kingdom pharaohs.
See, the new kingdom pharaohs, which was the 18th dynasty of Egypt. Remember that. If you don't remember anything else, that's the dynasty that we were enslaved in Egypt. The 18th dynasty of Egypt. All right, continue.
An age of builders. Like the old kingdom with its towering pyramids, rulers of the new kingdom erected magnificent palaces, temples, and tombs.
See that? What they did? They erected what?
Palaces,
temples,
and tombs.
And tombs. That's the period while we was enslaved in Egypt, building up the mighty cities of Egypt. Continue.
In search of security in the afterlife, they hid their splendid tombs beneath desert cliffs. In this way, they would not be plundered by grave robbers and looters. The site they chose was the remote valley of the kings near Thebes. Besides royal tombs, the pharaohs of this period also built great palaces.
Great palaces.
And magnificent temples.
Magnificent temples. That's what we was doing. We weren't building pyramids, okay? Because the pyramids that was built in Egypt was built by what? They were built from what? Stones. While we was in Egypt, we was working in what? While we was in Egypt, what were we working in? Stones or bricks? Bricks. We're going to go back to the scripture and show you. That's the period he's talking about here. We were working in bricks and in mortar. The pyramids that was built prior to us going to Egypt was made of stone. From quarry stones and different stones of Egypt. Remember, the Pharaoh stands to go get bricks. Then after a while, he said, you know what? I ain't gonna give you no more. I'm gonna give you no more straw. You have to go get your own straw to build these bricks. So they doubled the quota on us to continue building all these great luxurious palaces and houses for the pharaohs. And we're gonna read about it in the book of Exodus. See, this is the history that ties in. Okay, read that part again.
The site they chose was the remote valley of kings near Thebes. Besides royal tombs, the pharaohs of this period also built great palaces.
Great palaces, go ahead.
And magnificent temples.
And magnificent temples, go ahead.
Indeed, the word pharaoh means great house.
That's what the word pharaoh means. It means great house. And it was predominantly used in the 18th dynasty of Egypt. The word pharaoh, which means great house. And a dynasty is a family line of rulers that rules in succession. Continue.
Means great house and comes from this time period.
See, from that time period, the 18th dynasty. Continue.
The word became a royal title. Want me to continue down?
No, and that was it. Yeah. You read this part here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it. So that's it on that. All right. So now, read this here for me, Shai. What is a dynasty?
Question. What is a dynasty?
Everybody know what's a dynasty? Egypt had many dynasties. Let me see if you all know. How many dynasties did Egypt have overall?
18.
No, that's the dynasty that we were in.
19.
After we left, the 19th dynasty came up under who? Under Ramses. Ramses, Seti. All right? But overall, how many dynasties did Egypt have? How much? No. Anybody else? Okay, put this in your repertoire. Egypt had 30 dynasties. 30 dynasties. Okay, and those dynasties were set up by Manetho, an Egyptian priest, during the 3rd century BC, that categorized Egypt into 30 dynasties. Okay, and what was the last dynasty of Egypt? Who ruled that last dynasty of Egypt? Y'all should know. Yeah, I know y'all know. Y'all were like, oh man. And they always talk about it. Esau always talk about it. Cleopatra. You heard about Cleopatra? The Ptolemies. That was the last dynasty of Egypt ruled by the Greeks. The Greeks went into Egypt and took over and ruled that dynasty. That was the last dynasty of Egypt ruled by the Ptolemies. The Greeks. Cleopatra wasn't an ancient Egyptian. Okay, she was a Greek. Dear Cleopatra. No. Her mother probably was an Egyptian, but her father was a Greek from the Ptolemies. Okay? Because remember, the Greeks came and took over Egypt. So when they took over Egypt, what did they do? They conquered and plundered and intermarried with the Egyptians. Okay? That was the end of the Egyptian kingdom. The end of their, well, it started to crumble after like around the 5th century BC. But when the Greeks came in, that was it for Egypt. So that ended the 30 dynasties of Egypt. Okay? So Manetho is the one that categorized the Egyptians into 30 dynasties. He was the Egyptian priest in the 3rd century BC. And also too, that Manetho, he's a little dirty bastard too. Because he omitted the history of Israelites in Egypt too, because of what the Most High did to Egypt. Josephus contended with him. Okay, remember the Egyptians never liked us. And if it was possible, they could rewrite the entire history without the Israelites being in Egypt. Okay, so read what a dynasty is.
What is a dynasty? A dynasty is a sequence of rulers from the same family.
See, a sequence of rulers from the same family. Continue.
A dynasty may also be referred to as a house or family.
See, a house or family, a family line of rulers. And that's what the 18th dynasty was, beginning with Ammuz. All right, that was it. Okay, now, okay, so read here Ammuz, about Ammuz.
Ammuz expelled the Hyksos, the first ruler of the 18th dynasty.
So he was the first ruler of the 18th dynasty. Now we're going to jump into our subject now, into going to the Bible now. Okay, so from there, let's go to the book of Exodus. All right, so after Ammuz expelled the Hyksos, the 18th dynasty took over Egypt from 1550 BC. 1550 BC to 1295 BC. I want you all to give me a calculation and tell me how long is that. 1550 BC to 1295 BC. Use a calculator, use whatever you got. I want you to tell me how many years or length or rulership is that. 1550 BC to 1295 BC.
255 years.
255 years. That's the full length of that 18th dynasty. It ruled for 255 years. Guess what? Ain't that ironic that America in 2026 is going to be 250 years? Ain't it ironic?
Yeah.
History always repeats itself. And what does the Most High call America? Spiritual Egypt. Spiritual Egypt. Now, that dynasty ruled for 255 years. But we did not stay that whole entire 255 years in that dynasty. When we left, that dynasty was still ruling for a period of time. How long did we stay in Egypt altogether? What was the length of stay beginning with Jacob going to Egypt to the Exodus? What was the length and stay of us in Egypt?
230.
I'm hearing a lot of different answers. From the time Jacob went down to Egypt to the Exodus,
400 years.
y'all never watched my class. Y'all wasn't paying attention, huh? From the time that Jacob went down to Egypt to the Exodus, how many years was that all together?
280.
I'm hearing a lot of answers, a lot of numbers, boy. 215 years. I taught you all this. I taught you all this. We spent all together 215 years in Egypt. Beginning when Jacob went down to Egypt with his sons to the Exodus with Moses, it's 215 years. And where was the other 215 years? Where was the other 215 years spent? No. The other 215 years was with Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham in the land of Canaan. From Abraham to Jacob is 215 years in the land of Canaan. From Jacob going into Egypt to the Exodus is another 215 years. Y'all got it? Put that in your repertoire. So now the question is, again, the second time, how many years did we spend in Egypt all together?
250.
Y'all not listening? How you get 430? Let me repeat myself again. I want you to get this understanding. From Jacob going into Egypt to the Exodus is 215 years. Now, from Abraham to Jacob is 215 years. And the other 215 years began when Jacob left Canaan and went down to Egypt and the Exodus with Moses. That's your 430 years together combined. So we only spent 215 years in Egypt. And out of that 215 years, how many years of it was slavery?
80.
What is going on here? How much, Quora?
80.
80 years. Boy, what's that? 430. You said 80? Well, you're right. 80 years of slavery. But the overall stay in Egypt was 215 years. So out of the 215 years, 80 years of it was slavery. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or do you not understand what I'm saying? So Yaikwa, interpret what I just said.
He said, we spent as slave in Egypt 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, we were spending 215 years.
Correct. And when did the 215 years begin? With who? With Jacob. When Jacob went down to Egypt with his sons. Remember that. The slavery did not start when Jacob went down to Egypt. But the count began when he went down to Egypt. That began the other half of the 215 years. From the point of Jacob to the Exodus of Moses, it's 215 years. So we got that clear now. Everybody got it? So if I ask somebody to explain, could you explain it properly? I want you to have the proper understanding of it. Okay? So now, for the 215 years that we were in Egypt, right? When Jacob went down to Egypt, who was ruling in Egypt at this particular time? Y'all just shutting out answers. You're not thinking.
Is that Ramesses?
I never said nothing about Ramesses. Ramesses came in the 19th dynasty. Okay? When Jacob went down to Egypt, who in particular was ruling Egypt? Joseph. Why y'all keep forgetting that your brother was ruling Egypt? Why y'all keep forgetting that? That's the only reason why Jacob went down to Egypt. Because Joseph was ruling in Egypt under the Hyksos. Come on, put on your thinking cap. We gotta go back to the scriptures now. You gotta get it right now. You don't want no Egyptians or no other Israel make you look like a fool now. When Jacob went down to Egypt, Joseph was ruling under the Hyksos. Right? When the Hyksos were expelled by Ammuz, was Joseph dead or alive?
Alive.
Now, listen what I'm saying. When the Ammuz expelled the Hyksos out of Egypt, was Joseph dead or alive? He was dead. Joseph died before the Hyksos got expelled. All right? So this is why I'm bringing up to the point to show you that the king that knew not Joseph was Amenhotep. That was the son of Ammuz. That's why I'm building up to the point to show you, so you could get the great picture of what's being said in Exodus, the 1st chapter. So let's go back now. Let's reiterate what I said. When Jacob went down into Egypt, who in particular was ruling Egypt? Joseph. Under whose rulership? The Hyksos. Okay, so did Joseph die or was he alive when Ammuz expelled the Hyksos? Joseph was dead. So while Joseph was dead, the Hyksos were still ruling Egypt. All right? Remember that. So now, how long did Joseph rule Egypt for? Y'all forgot already? Zechariah. What the heck am I hearing here? Come on, y'all disappointing me, man. Y'all not listening to what I'm saying. Shafkai, I know you pay very close and you take notes. How long did Joseph rule Egypt? I know you know, Shafkai, you take notes and you listen very carefully. How long did Joseph rule Egypt?
7.
Let me ask the sisters over here. How long did Joseph rule Egypt? Yaquab.
70 years.
Where you get 70 years from, Jacob? Yaquab? Where you get 70 years from? Let me ask the sister over here.
91 years.
That's the length of time he lived in Egypt for. He lived in Egypt for 93 years because he went in from the age of 17 and he died at the age of 110. All right? He went into Egypt at the age of 17 and he died at the age of 110. So now, if Jacob died at if Joseph died at 110 years, how long did he rule Egypt for? What age did he begin to rule Egypt?
30.
At what age? 30. So how long did he rule Egypt for?
93 years.
61 years.
80 years. Let's go, I have to go back to that. Let's go back to that again real quick. Are you sure? And let me get to the point where I'm Hotep. Well, okay, let's go to the book of Genesis. Right? It's very important that we get this proper understanding. I know it's kind of difficult. A lot of us don't like history, but history is very important. History plays a vital role in everything you do in life, man. Let's go to Genesis 37. Actually, Genesis 41. I'm sorry, Genesis 41. Genesis 41, and start from the 38th verse.
Genesis chapter 41 and verse 38. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the spirit of Yahweh is?
Now, at this particular time, who was ruling Egypt? The H.O.D.C. All right? So this was an Egyptian H.O.D.C. pharaoh. This was not a true native Egyptian pharaoh. Put that in your notes. This was the H.O.D.C., the pharaoh of the Hyksos that was ruling Egypt at this particular time. All right, continue.
Verse 39. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as Yahweh hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou.
See what the Pharaoh told Joseph? Only in the throne will I be greater than thee. Okay? So Joseph was coming into his position now. Continue.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt.
Now, was it over all the land of Egypt? What land was he talking about? Right. The area where the H.O.D.C. was ruling in was called H.O.D.C. That was the Nile Delta Valley area known as Lower Egypt. Okay? This is where the H.O.D.C. was ruling in. An area called H.O.D.C. in the Nile Delta Valley of Lower Egypt. That's the same place where Goshen was located. That same area. All right, continue.
Verse 42. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen.
See, that's what the Egyptians used to wear. Fine linen. That was their trademark. Fine linen. Okay, continue.
And put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride into the second chariot, which he had.
Which was the chariots of the Hyksos. Continue.
And they cried before him, bow the knee, and made him ruler over all the land of Egypt.
Okay, so it says over all the land, but it wasn't all the land, because who was ruling up in Egypt prior to this time?
The Nubians.
No, the Nubians wasn't ruling. It was Ammuz that came from the 17th dynasty. Okay? The Nubians wasn't ruling yet, but they were contending with the Egyptians. They were fighting, warring against them. So the Theban dynasty was in the Upper Egypt. That's where Ammuz came from. And he took over Lower, Middle, and Upper Egypt altogether. Okay, continue.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, a priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt.
Over all the land of Lower Egypt, because Egypt is a massive country. Okay? It's a real big country. Continue.
And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt.
Remember that. Put that into your notes. Put it into your repertoire. Joseph was 30 years old when he did what?
When he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt.
When he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt, at the age of 30. Continue.
And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years.
That's it. Okay. Now go to Genesis 50 now. Genesis 50. And start from the 22nd verse.
Genesis 50 and verse 22. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house. And Joseph lived 110 years.
See? Joseph lived to be 110 years old. When you become a ruler in Egypt, you rule until your death. Nobody takes over your kingdom unless it's by war or some other reason. But as long as you live, you're a governor or a vizier of that particular country of Egypt or dynasty. So how long did Joseph rule? 80 years. Okay, continue reading on.
Verse 23. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the 3rd generation, and the children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, who were brought up upon Joseph's knee. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and Yahweh will surely visit you.
Okay, so Joseph died. So who was still ruling?
The H.O.D.C.
The H.O.D.C. So Joseph died, but the H.O.D.C was still ruling at this particular time. That's why Ammuz was able to expel the H.O.D.C. All right? See what I'm building up to? So Joseph died, but the H.O.D.C was still ruling. Now, Joseph's sons was following into his footstep when Joseph died. And who was Joseph's 2 sons? Ephraim and Manasseh. They was continuing what his father left off in Egypt. All right? Continue reading on.
I die, and Yahweh will surely visit you, and bring you out of this land into the land which he sware unto Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, Yahweh will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt.
Right. So you see that. So he died. So we now when you get to Exodus, the 1st chapter, you see what's happening here now. So then the new king is going to come into play now. All right? So Ammuz expelled them out of Egypt, and they were still there in Egypt. All right? So you are starting to see the picture I'm building up to, right? If y'all don't, let me know.
Can you repeat that?
Okay, so while Joseph ruled for those 80 years, then he eventually died. So who was still ruling Egypt at this particular time? The Hyksos. So while Joseph was dead and the Hyksos was still ruling, now they came the ruler of the 17th dynasty, Ammuz, and he came into power and he took over that dynasty and he did what? He expelled the Hyksos out of Egypt. When he expelled them and he ruled for a period of time, then he died. Then when he died, who came into power next? his son. All right? His son was Amenhotep the first. Okay? Now, a pharaoh in Egypt had two names. He had his birth name, which was Amenhotep, which means Amun is at peace with him. Okay? And he had a throne name, which was Jizekeri. I'll spell it. It's D-J-E-S-E-R-K-A-R-E. That is his throne name, Jizekeri. His birth name was Amenhotep. A-M-E-N-H-O-T-E-P. Amenhotep is his birth name. So he took over after Ammuz died. And he became that new king over Egypt that knew not Joseph. All right, so let's go to the book of Exodus, the first chapter now. So everybody got the picture now, what I'm showing you. All right? All right, so let's go to Exodus, the first chapter. Start at 1, yes.
Exodus chapter 1 and verse 1. Now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob.
Right. So now Jacob came into Egypt before Joseph died. All right. We know that, right? Before Joseph died, Jacob and his sons came down into Egypt. Okay. And what proved that? Let's go to the book of Genesis, the 46th chapter. Genesis 46. Genesis 46, and start from the first verse.
Genesis chapter 46 and verse 1. And Israel took his journey with all that he had, and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices unto Yahweh of his father Isaac. And Yahweh spake unto Israel in the visions of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. And he said, I am Yahweh, the power of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation.
See? So that's where the Most High was going to make us a great nation. So he told Jacob, don't fear to go down to Egypt. Continue. Because he didn't know Joseph was alive. All right? He thought Joseph was dead. All right? Continue.
I will go with thee into Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again, and Joseph shall put his hand upon thee. And Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob their father, and their little ones, and their wives, and the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. And they took their cattle and their goods, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan.
See, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan. So now this is going to begin the other half of the 215 years. From Jacob going to Egypt starts the other 215 years to the Exodus with Moses completes that 215 years in Egypt. Continue.
In the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him. Verse 7. His sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his daughters' daughters, and all his seed brought he with him into Egypt.
See? So now they're going down to Egypt. Continue.
And these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt, Jacob and his sons, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the sons of Reuben, Hanak, and Palu, and Hezron, and Carmi, and the sons of Simeon, Jemuel, and Jamin, and Ohad, and Jachim, and Zohar, and Shaul, the son of the Canaanitish woman, and the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari.
See, he said, Goshen, Kohath, and Merari. All these sons here were already born and living in the land of Canaan. Continue. Go ahead.
And the sons of Judah, and Onan, and Shelah, and Pharez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Pharez were Hezron, and Hamul. And the sons of Issachar, Tola, and Phuvah, and Job, and Shimron. And the sons of Zebulun, Sered, and Elon, and Jahleel. These be the sons of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob in Padan Aram with his daughter Dinah. And all the souls of his sons and his daughters were 33. And the sons of Gad, Ziphion, and Haggai, and Shuni, and Esbon.
Okay, now jump down to 26. So already get the picture that he bring down with all his sons and his daughters. All right? Jump to 26 now.
Verse 26. All the souls that came out with Jacob into Egypt, which came out of his loins, besides Jacob's sons' wives, all the souls were 66.
See? There was 66 of them that went down to Egypt. Okay? 66 people went down to Egypt with Jacob. Continue.
And the sons of Joseph, which were born him in Egypt, were 2 souls. All the souls of the house of Jacob, which came into Egypt, were 70.
So it was 70 altogether, including Joseph and his sons. Okay? Continue.
Verse 28. And he sent Judah before him unto Joseph, to direct his face unto Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen.
See where we went to? What land we went to? The land of Goshen. That's the same era where the H.O.D.C was ruling. The H.O.D.C called it Avaris, and we call it Goshen. Continue.
And Joseph made ready his chariot, and went up to meet Israel his father, to Goshen, and presented himself unto him. And he fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said unto Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. And Joseph said unto his brethren, and unto his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh, and say unto him, My brethren and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. And these men are shepherds, for their trade hath been to feed cattle, and they have brought their flocks, and their herds, and all that they have. And it shall come to pass, when Pharaoh shall call you, and shall say, What is your occupation?
Now, this shows you right here. In this verse right here alone shows you these were not native Egyptians. Continue reading now. I'm going to explain what. Continue.
Verse 34. That ye shall say, Thy servant's trade hath been about cattle from our youth, even until now, both we and also our fathers, that ye may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians.
So you see that? So shepherds were an abomination to the true native Egyptians. They looked down upon shepherds. You like, they frown at you. You scums. You're not of a noble class of people. Shepherd? Taking care of cattle? They frown on that. But the H.O.D.C did the same occupation. The H.O.D.C were also known as shepherd kings. They had the same occupation as us. So this right here shows you this was not the true native Egyptian that was ruling Egypt. Because the true native Egyptians hated shepherds. So when they said that to that Pharaoh, which was a H.O.D.C king, he will put them in where? The land where shepherds have their cattle. And that's what he did. He put them in the same land that the H.O.D.C had. This right here alone proves this was not the true native Egyptians ruling Egypt. Yes.
And that's why Joseph told them to let Pharaoh know what their occupation was.
Right, because he knew that the Pharaoh was going to put them in the best of the land. If you're a shepherd, I can't put you in the desert. I have to put you where? Where the land is what? Fertile. All right? Grass. Plenty, grass. That's why the Most High said, I'll bring you into a land flowing with what? Milk and honey. Pastures. All right? So that's what the Pharaoh did. He put us in the land of Goshen. Because they were shepherds too. The H.O.D.C. Okay? That was it on that, right? Now, let's go back to Exodus now. So we see Jacob came down to Egypt while Joseph was still in power. All right? Let's go back to Exodus, and I'll start off again from the first verse.
Exodus chapter 1 and verse 1. Now these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. Every man and his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation.
So after a period of time of Joseph ruling Egypt, he died. Okay, he died. Continue.
And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied.
So we was growing phenomenally. Right? We was we was growing so fast, multiplying so fast in Egypt within that 80-year period that Joseph ruled. And even after Joseph died. Because even after Joseph died, we still had a period of success until that new king came in that knew not Joseph. When that new king came in, that was it. It was all over. It's time to pay the price. All right, continue.
And waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them.
Now it said the land was full of them. Which land?
Goshen.
Right, Goshen. Because remember, how could we outnumber all of Egypt? It's impossible, right? The Egyptians were already a nation before us. So how are we going to come and surpass the Egyptians that was already a nation before us? The Most High said we were the last of the nations. Even when we entered Canaan, the Most High said what? 7 nations mightier and greater than thou were in the land. So how could we outnumber the Egyptian? But we outnumbered them when we went into the land of Goshen, the lower part of Egypt, because the Egyptians that came from upper Egypt had eventually took over lower Egypt. So we started to outnumber them. But we didn't outnumber all of Egypt. It's impossible. It's impossible, totally impossible for 70 of us to outnumber a nation that was already ruling hundreds of years before us, probably thousands. It's impossible. Think what I'm saying. So when the scripture said we started to outnumber them, we started to outnumber them in the lower parts of Egypt, the area that we were situated in. We didn't outnumber all of Egypt. It's impossible. Everybody get what I'm saying? All right? Because remember, when Jacob was in the land of Canaan, Egypt was a power already ruling. When Abraham went down to Egypt, were the Egyptians ruling? Yes. When Isaac went down to Egypt, the Egyptians was ruling. And when Abraham went down to Egypt, were we born yet? No, we weren't born yet. So how could we outnumber the Egyptians? So you see, when you read the scriptures, it has to link up, history has to be linked up with the Bible. And you have to fill in the points that the Bible doesn't show you. Because the Bible doesn't give you every detail, historical records and facts. It only highlights certain points. Then you have to go and do the research to get the different parts of the history that fits right in. Are there other books that fits in with this? Yes. There are other books that give the history too. Understand? We didn't just have these these 70 books. We had many books, many records. Okay, so continue reading on.
Verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt.
See? Now there arose a new king now. Ammuz expelled the H.O.D.C. He died. Now here comes his son, Amenhotep I. This is your new king that knew not Joseph. Okay, continue.
Which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people.
What does it mean when he said he knew not Joseph?
He heard of him, but he didn't spend any time with him to know him.
Kind of. You're on the right track. Kind of.
He didn't care for Joseph.
He didn't care for what Joseph did for us in Egypt, or what Joseph did in Egypt. Because remember, when this dynasty came into Egypt, what was they going to do? Take back over all of Egypt and rid everything of foreign rulers. So they didn't want to hear no crap. No H.O.D.C ruling. You Hebrews here doing good. We don't want to hear that. We taking back our rulership. I would do the same too. If I was being oppressed and suppressed by a foreign country, and I came back to take power, I would do the same thing too. I don't know you. I don't give a damn about you. You niggas going down. Anybody would do the same thing too. Because remember, they were being overran by the Hyksos. And the Egyptians hated the Hyksos, man. It's of all history that Egypt highlighted, this one of the Hyksos was never highlighted. They said that was the most embarrassing, the most humiliating point of history of Egypt, when the Hyksos ruled Egypt. So you think they're going to come and say, hi, Hyksos, we love you? No. So that's why he said, I knew not Joseph. I don't give a damn how good he was. I ain't trying to hear him. I'm the new man in town. I'm the new boss. That's what it meant by that. He knew not Joseph. Ain't trying to hear what Joseph did for us. Read that verse again.
Verse 8. Now arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we.
See what he says? The children of Israel are more and mightier than we. We became mightier than them. Because that was a family dynasty that took over Egypt. So we began to outnumber that particular group of Egyptians that took over that 18th dynasty. And that dynasty was known as the Theban dynasty. It came from Thebes, which is upper Egypt. All right? That's what it means, we became mightier than them. Not all over all Egypt. We became mightier than that dynasty that ruled that particular dynasty of Egypt. Continue.
Verse 10. Come on. Let us deal with them wisely.
So he said, let us deal with them wisely. Let's devise crafty devices to deal with them. Because remember, when they took over Egypt, they still had rivals. Who was their rivals? Who said it? The Nubians. The Nubians, the Ethiopians were still their rivals. Because they were still fighting against the Nubians. They expelled the Hyksos, so that's one problem gone. Okay, we got the Hyksos out now, but wait, we still got the Nubians there. All right, continue.
Verse 10. Come on, let us deal with them wisely, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falleth out any war.
See what he says? So he was thinking of what? Political, socially. He was thinking, wait a minute. We just can't just do anything to them now. Because if anything happened now, they're going to join forces with the Nubians. Because the Hyksos had affiliation with the Nubians too. That's why they was able to keep Egypt suppressed. Okay, continue.
When there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies.
Right, because he just expelled the Hyksos. He said, wait a minute. Lest they join with our enemies. Who were their enemies? The Nubians. So he was saying, be careful now. Let's do something better now. If we get them out the land, these Hebrews are going to join up with the Nubians and fight against us and take us down again. And we can't have that. Continue.
They join also unto our enemies and fight against us.
See? So he was thinking on those levels. He was thinking what? Militarily, politically. All right? Continue.
And so get them up out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters.
So he said, you know what instead? Let's put them in slavery, man. They ain't going nowhere. Let's put them here and let's use them. Continue.
Taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities.
See? So they built for Pharaoh treasure cities like we read earlier. We built palaces, temples. That's what we was doing during that time period. Continue.
Pithom and Ramses.
Pithom and Ramses. Then Ramses came later on and he took that same land over. So we were building up cities for Ramses. So when he came in, it was already being prepared for Ramses in the 19th dynasty. Okay, continue.
But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And they were grieved because of the children of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor.
With rigor. They didn't slack nothing on us, man. They put the pressure on us, man. Okay, continue.
And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar, and in brick.
See? Mortar and brick, not stones. Brick. Because they're going to try to trip you up and say, yeah, you Israelites built the pyramids, right? And first thing we say, we built them. That's the first thing we'll say out our mouth. Yeah, we built the pyramids. Then the Egyptians, they're crafty too. These Egyptologists, they're going to say, oh, you built the pyramids, huh? And they'll say, what was it built by? And the first thing you're going to say, yeah, brick. Right there, you put your foot in your mouth. You understand? Because they're going to try to trip you up. They're going to say, if you were in Egypt and you built the pyramids, what did you build the pyramids with? The pyramids wasn't built by bricks. It was built by stones. Okay? When we came in, we started building structures from bricks. Remember, the Giza pyramids and all those other pyramids were built by stone, not by bricks. So be careful how you say, yeah, we built the pyramid of Egypt. And then you put your foot in your mouth. And then they put you to the test and say, yeah, how was it built by? And you're going to say stone. And that's where you're going to say bricks. And that's where they're going to catch you right there. So at this point, this when Amenhotep, Thutmose, and all these different pharaohs was ruling Egypt. So read that verse again, Yeshua.
Verse 14. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick.
In mortar and bricks, go ahead.
And in all manner of service in the field.
See, and all manner of service in the fields. Whatever you could think of, we was doing in the field. Okay? Running the irrigation, the back channels, so the water could bring water in from the Nile. Irrigation, we was doing all of that. Hard bondage, man. Building up mighty structures for these pharaohs. Okay, continue.
All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then you shall kill him.
See what he said? If it be a son, you kill him. Why did he say to kill the sons? They're the seed. And what else too? The sons are the ones that's going to fight in the middle to take over the Egyptian empire. So you destroy the population, genocide. You kill the male population and you leave the female alone. That's what he was doing. He did the same thing here in America too in slavery. The same thing. Continue.
Then you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared Yahweh, and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing, and saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively, and they are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them. Therefore Yahweh dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty.
And we waxed and multiplied exceedingly. Continue.
And it came to pass, because the midwives feared Yahweh, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river.
See? Now, why would you cast him into the river? Why would you cast his sons into the river?
The warriors.
Is it so they could just drown in the river? When they drown in the river, who's going to eat them? Crocodiles. Crocodiles. The crocodiles are going to eat them. Right? And the Egyptian had a god called Sobek, the crocodile god. That's why the Most High made mockery of them for that. Right? The Most High made mockery of their god called Sobek, the Egyptian crocodile god. Because that's what they was doing. Casting us into the Nile River so we could be eaten up by the crocodiles. Okay, continue.
Every son that is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive.
Right, and this was Amenhotep the first. Then right after that came Thutmose the first, when Moses was born. Okay, and that's where Moses came from. Continue reading on the second chapter.
Chapter 2 and verse 1. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived, and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she set it, and she laid it in the flags by the river's bank. And his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept.
Right. So who was this? All right. And who was the female that found him? What was her name? I'll spell it for you. Write it down. All right. This female, her name was H.O.D.C. Right? That was Pharaoh's daughter. Okay, let me spell her name for you. I want to watch her name. Okay, her name is spelled H-A-T-S-H-E-P-U-T. Hatshepsut. H-A-T-S-H-E-P-U-T. This was Pharaoh's daughter that found Moses. And when she found him, she named him after her father, Thutmose the first. And Thutmose is spelled T-H-U-T-M-O-S-E. And this was Thutmose the first. Right? When Moses was born. So you see how it links up? So everything links up. The only way you can find this, you have to go into the 18th dynasty. And when you go into the 18th dynasty, you'll see the names of all the kings that reigned in that 18th dynasty. Then you have to fit the pieces in. All right? So Thutmose the first, that was her father. All right? Continue reading on.
The babe wept, and she had compassion on him, and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children."
See, she said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. How did she know that? How did she know that? How did she know that was one of the Hebrews' children? Why did she say, oh, that's an Egyptian baby, oh, that's... When she said, that was, oh, my father's children.
Because the father was telling them to throw the children into the Nile.
That too, and what else? Right. It was a Hebrew apparel that he had wrapped up into. Every culture knew the different cultures. It's only now we might don't know, what is he doing? But back then, cultures knew one another from what? Their dress code and from their names. The Egyptians knew us. They knew that we were not their people. And that's when she saw it, she's like, wow, that's one of the Hebrews' baby. Right off the bat, she knew it was a Hebrew baby. We looked different. Even though we were both dark-skinned, but we looked different. Okay, continue.
Verse 7. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, "Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages." And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son.
See, and he became her son, her stepson. She classified Moses as her son. So if she classified Moses as son, more than likely she's going to name it after her father, because he was a great pharaoh. And most of the times, most pharaohs named their sons after them. Whether they're the first, the second, the third, the fourth. Let me give you an example. How many Ramses was there? Was there only one Ramsey? There was a slew of Ramses. All right? It was, I think, at least 10 or 12 Ramses, or probably more. Yes.
I have a question. So they named after them. They got a name after them, like the full name, the first, middle, the last name.
Right. They give them their birth name and their throne name.
Okay.
So the name that they was born with, from the time they came to mother's womb to the time they ascend the throne as a king of Egypt.
What if they don't have the same last name as their father, the same first name, they still named after?
They still keep that title from that dynasty of the family line.
Okay, you still got the Jew.
Yeah. All right. So for every pharaoh had a throne name and a birth name. So a lot of times when you try to look it up, you say, well, I don't see it. You have to look up under his throne name when he became a pharaoh, ruling in the throne. Then you have to look up his birth name. Okay. Continue.
And she called his name Moses.
What verse you in?
The end of 10.
And the 10, right? Go ahead.
And she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water.
Because I drew him out of the water. All right, continue.
Moses kills an Egyptian, just so you know. And it comes to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting in Hebrew.
Now, in these verses here, these are years gone by, years between each of these verses. Because when you get down here now to the 11th verse, this is 40 years after. This is like 40 years after, now that he's a full-grown man. Because in the 10th verse, he was what? A baby, right? Now when you get to the 11th verse, he's what? 40 years old right here. All right, so it's a period of history and time between each verses. Continue.
And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting in Hebrew, one of his brethren.
See? So he knew, Moses knew he was a Hebrew. It wasn't a big secret. He knew because he saw the Egyptians smiting his Hebrew brother, and he didn't like that. Continue.
And he looked this way and that way. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian.
He slew that Egyptian. He probably choke him out or probably stab him or something. Right? Because you know Moses was a warrior too. Moses wasn't a pushover, man. Moses was a general in the Egyptian army. Continue.
He slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said to them that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us?
Typical Israelite. Yo, who you are, man? Who you think you are, man? Who judge over us, man? And it's always the one that's wrong doing the most talking. Continue.
Intendest thou to kill me as thou killed the Egyptian?
See what he said? He said, what? You gonna kill me like you killed that Egyptian too, Negro? That's our people for you. Yeah, you gonna kill me now, huh? Yeah, what you gonna do? You gonna kill me now because of that? So when Moses saw that, go ahead.
And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known.
So Moses feared. Why did Moses fear? Why did he fear?
Retaliation.
Right, the retaliation, because he was still an officer or a general in the Egyptian army. That's considered what? Treason. That's worthy of death. So Moses said, wow, this thing is known now. And you know he was going to rat. That's an Israelite right there. He's going to rat for cheap. You ain't got to pay him off. Tell me who did it. Yeah, the general you had there. Right away, the Egyptians are going to say, the general? The only general we have is Moses. All right? Continue.
Verse 15. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses.
Now, this was another Pharaoh now that came into power. This Pharaoh here was Thutmose II. All right? There's another Pharaoh here now. Continue.
But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian.
Where is the land of Midian?
Ethiopia.
Why y'all keep saying Ethiopia? Why y'all keep saying Ethiopia? The land of Midian is Saudi Arabia. Right? They were the Midianites. Abraham's son through Keturah. but they're still family to Ishmael because they all dwelt in that same area. Right? Remember, the land of Midian is a large land. It's bigger than Egypt. Way bigger than Egypt, man. Saudi Arabia, it's a big country, man. Massive. So all the families of Keturah, of Ishmael, they all live in that land, in the land of Midian. Now today, Saudi Arabia is comprised of what? Qatar, Kuwait, Yemen, United Arab Emirates. All that is Saudi Arabia in one big shebang. That's where all the families of Keturah, which are the Midianites, and the sons of Ishmael, they live in that area. And remember, Ishmael had, how many princes Ishmael had? How much? 12, just like Israel. He had 12 princes. Okay, continue.
Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses.
So when Moses heard this, he said, I gotta kill Moses now. I gotta kill this dude, man. Because the whole vibration is gonna spread through the Egyptian influence. And that's gonna cause what? Division. He goes, so how are you gonna allow your general to kill an Egyptian and he's still ruling? He said, I have to kill Moses now. Okay, continue.
But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well.
So he fled from the king, from the Pharaoh, and dwelt in the land of Midian. So he went over into Saudi Arabia. Now, how far is Saudi Arabia from Egypt?
2 hours.
Just across the border. You go across the desert, you're in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, just like Jersey, and you go over the border. Right across the water. Egypt is to Saudi Arabia. All right? Continue.
Verse 16. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them, and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, How is it that ye are come so soon today?
Right? So now check this out now. So their father asked him, how is it you back so soon? Because the father, he's a shepherd too. He knows that when you're taking care of sheep, goats, it's not a easy 1, 2, 3 thing. You might be in the fields all day. But he said, man, y'all back so quick already. So now look what they told the father. Read on.
Verse 19. And they said, An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherd.
Now, why would they say he's an Egyptian? Because they were a different culture too. And how do they know that? Because the way he was dressed. His apparel. Every culture had certain dress code and certain looks. Continue.
And also drew water enough for us, and watered the flock. And he said unto his daughters, And where is he? Why is it that ye have left the man? Call him that he may eat bread.
So they saw Moses as an Egyptian, but was he really Egyptian? No. It's just like you go to a different country. Let's say you go to Pakistan, and you live in Pakistan for 40 years. What kind of dress code you gonna adapt? The Pakistani dress code. You go anywhere. Even after a while, you might start speaking the language. You might start speaking Pakistani fluently. So I might say, hey, where you from? You might say, he's a Pakistani. We say, no, I'm not Pakistan. I live in Pakistan. Or I live in certain part of the earth. Just like you go to Africa. Let's say you go to Ghana. And you stayed in Ghana for 20 years. Are you going to be wearing the same clothes you wearing here? You're going to wear Ghanaian apparel. And you might be speaking what? The Ghanaian language. You understand? So that's the same with Moses. Being that he grew up and was born in Egypt, he was wearing the Egyptian apparel. And they said, yeah, an Egyptian. They said that he's an Egyptian. Continue.
Call him that he may eat bread. Verse 21. And Moses was content to dwell with the man. And he gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter, and she bare him a son. And he called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. Verse 23. And it came to pass in a process of time that the king of Egypt died.
Right. So Tutmos II died. All right? So this is another succession of pharaohs, of kings that ruled Egypt. It wasn't all one pharaoh. These were different pharaohs that came into power. While Moses was out into Midian, this was already 2 pharaohs. All right? That transpired, that came into rulership. Now, I'm going to read the time period of the pharaohs. All right? Shall I read this from you? Starting from Ammuz down to Thutmose III.
Ammuz, 1550 to 1525.
So he ruled for 25 years. He was the first ruler or pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. All right, go ahead.
Amenhotep the first.
Amenhotep the first. He was the one that knew not Joseph. Continue.
Thutmose the first, 1529 to 1516, 13 years.
So Amenhotep ruled for 21 years. He ruled for 21 years. Then he died. All right, go ahead.
Thutmose the second, 1516 to 1506, 10 years.
He ruled for 10 years. But Thutmose ruled for how much?
13.
Thutmose ruled for 13 years. All right, go ahead.
Hatshepsut, 1504 to 1484, 20 years.
She ruled for 20 years. All right, go ahead.
Thutmose III, 1506 to 1452, 54 years.
He ruled the longest. Of all the pharaohs that took over from that 18th dynasty, he ruled the longest. Then, one of the longest ruling pharaohs that came after in the 19th dynasty, what was his name? And he ruled the longest. He was famous. King Tut lived a short period of time. Ramses ruled for a long time, and he said he had like over 150 children. Right? He ruled for about 67 years in the 19th dynasty. But Thutmose III ruled for 54 years, and he was that pharaoh during the time of the Exodus. All right, go ahead.
Amenhotep II, 1455 to 1418, 37 years.
Mm-hmm.
So Joseph died before the Hyksos were expelled.
Okay, that's it. So that was the time period for these are the major pharaohs that ruled. You have more, but these were the major ones that was involved while we was there in Egypt. All right. So Thutmose III ruled for 54 years, and like I said, while he ruled, he had the most campaign fighting against the Nubians and going into the Levant. He had 17 annual campaigns, but the 18th one, he didn't make it because his army was decimated. How was his army decimated? His army got destroyed in the Red Sea during the Exodus. Now, the Most High allowed him to live to see the destruction of his army. Right? Then after that, when he died, another pharaoh came in and took over. All right? So we left that 18th dynasty while that dynasty was still ruling. All right? We didn't complete the full term of that 18th dynasty in Egypt, because we only spent 215 years in that dynasty. I remember how long that dynasty ruled for? Yes.
It was a sojourning out of Egypt.
A sojourner?
Yeah, so the 12 tribes. It was more so a sojourning for the Israelites.
Yeah, we sojourned out of Egypt.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. But he was the pharaoh that was during the Exodus. Thutmose III. All right. So where we left off in our Exodus?
Verse 23.
Verse 23.
Exodus chapter 2 and verse 23. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage. And they cried, and their cry came up to Yahweh by reason of the bondage. And Yahweh heard their groaning, and Yahweh remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And Yahweh looked upon the children of Israel, and Yahweh had respect unto them.
So this was Thutmose III. All right. So while Moses was in Midian, Thutmose the third was ruling. And when Moses came back into Egypt, he was still ruling. Because remember, he ruled for what? 54 years. And how long did Moses stay in Midian? How long did Moses stay in Midian? 40 years. All right. Remember, Moses left Egypt at 40, went down to Midian, and stayed in Midian for 40 years. Then at the end of 40 years, he came back where? Into Egypt. At what age? 80. So those 40 years that he was gone, Thutmose III began to rule. And how long did Thutmose rule for? 54 years. So it ties right in with the time period that Moses was exiled from Egypt and came back. And then when you go to Exodus, the 7th chapter now, let's go to Exodus, the 7th chapter. And start from the first verse. So this same Thutmose III was ruling when Moses came back into Egypt. Exodus 7 and 1.
Exodus chapter 7 and verse 1. And Adonai said unto Moses, See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, that he send the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt, and bring forth mine armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. And the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh, when I stretch forth my hand upon Egypt, and shall bring out the children of Israel from among them. And Moses and Aaron did as Yahweh commanded them. So did they. And Moses was 80 years old.
See, Moses was 80 now when he met with this Pharaoh, Thutmose III. Okay, go ahead.
And Aaron 83 years old.
And Aaron was 83 years old. Go ahead.
When they spake unto Pharaoh.
When they spake to Thutmose III. So that's the length of the slavery right there. Because the slavery started with Moses and it ended when Moses brought us up with the Exodus. So when Moses came back into Egypt, he was 80 years old and he spoke with this Pharaoh. Continue.
And the Most High spake unto Moses and said unto Aaron, saying, When Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, Show a miracle for you, then thou shalt say unto Aaron, Take thy rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent.
All right. So we see this is the Pharaoh that Moses dealt with, Thutmose III. That was the Pharaoh. Okay. So I'm gonna end the class here. I got more to bring out, but it's a good bit more. I know y'all might get tired. All right. I don't want to bombard your brain with too much information, because too much information could really get you tired. Yes.
So I just want to say to James, though, he was reading about this. Of course, I always think about the movie. That's why the Most High so fast. But the Most High makes examples. He makes television sets. But you know the part when he said earlier, he says, "Fear not when you go down to Egypt." And we're in spiritual Egypt right now. I don't fear. You're not supposed to fear when we go out there now, right? That's what I'm gonna say. So much, but you know.
All right.
Say that.
So everybody get the time period and the picture that I'm trying to show who the Pharaoh that knew not Joseph was. All right. So I'm gonna ask a question again for verification and for understanding. How many years did we spend in Egypt overall?
215.
Who said 430?
215.
My goodness, man. 215 years we spent in Egypt. How many years of it was in slavery? 80. Okay, now y'all talking to me. All right, now y'all sound like y'all showing positive. Okay, so when we went down to Egypt, who were the initial rulers of Egypt at that particular time? The H.O.D.C. And when we went down there, who in particular of our family was ruling Egypt? Joseph. How long did Joseph rule in Egypt? Y'all sure? Y'all sound skeptical. Y'all wrote the scriptures down? 80 years. All right? And how many years was the slavery?
80 years.
80 plus 80 is how much?
160.
160. 160 subtracted from 215 is how much? 215 minus 160 is how much? 215 minus 160. 55. What is the 55 years? Let me see if y'all can figure it out. What is the 55 years?
Years is we was ruling. We wasn't in bondage at that time. But then 55 years.
Mm-hmm. You get in there. You get in there. The 55-year period is the gap from Joseph to Moses. The 55 years is the gap from Joseph to when Moses was born. That's the 55-year period or gap. Because remember, Joseph ruled for 80 years. Then it says Joseph died. Then it said he came a king that knew not Joseph. Then Moses was born. And remember, do the math. If we spent 215 years in Egypt, Joseph ruled for 80 years, Moses 80 years, 160, and you subtract that from 215, 55 years. That's the gap between Joseph to Moses. It's right there all the time. It's basic math. All right? So now, what is the 430 years?
It's the total amount from Abraham to
the end of the sojourn.
From Abraham to Joseph.
Beautiful. Say it again. Say it again one more time.
That's from Abraham to Joseph going down into Egypt. I mean to Jacob going down into Egypt with his family.
You said it right the first time. From Abraham to the Exodus with Moses is the 430 years. That gives you the Exodus. All right? Because the count began with Abraham when the Most High made the covenant and the promise with Abraham in the land of Canaan to the Exodus with Moses and the children of Israel is 430 years. That's the count. That's the full count. That's your understanding of the 430 years. Right? The count began with Abraham in the land of Canaan. When he went into Canaan, from that time, then he had Isaac and he had Jacob. So from Abraham to Jacob was 215 years. And from Jacob leaving Canaan to going to Egypt until the Exodus is the other 215 years, which gives you the total of the 430 years. Not 430 years we spent in Egypt as slave. That's incorrect. There's no records, there's no history showing you our people were enslaved in Egypt for 430 years. No records you can find in Egypt showing that. Okay? And even though the Egyptians were biased, they'd at least put some kind of records concerning that. But there's no records to prove in the Egyptian annals of history that we spent 430 years as slaves in Egypt. Because even the Egyptians knew how long the Hyksos ruled Egypt for until they expelled them. And like I said, when you read it, Josephus, read it, Josephus. Even Josephus tells you we spent 215 years in Egypt. All the other records, the Samaritan, the Septuagint, the Pentateuch, it tells you we spent 215 years in Egypt.
How did they do their power transfer? Did they vote, or how did this work? The Egyptian versus the Hyksos. How
did they?
Yeah, like, you know, today we vote.
Mm-hmm.
What was the process for them to make that transfer?
To transfer the Egyptians, expand
The power.
the power.
Yeah, the power.
It's usually by taking over.
Oh, so it was like a war.
Yeah, a take over. Okay. Whoever is more dominant take over. You understand? They ain't going no voting process. You understand? But when the Hyksos came in, they worked their way up and eventually took it over because they saw the weakness of Egypt at that time. Egypt was fragile. It was divided. There was warring. So the Hyksos said, you know what? We could take this baby, man. We could take this thing. And that's what they did. And that shook up the Egyptians to see that foreign rulers came in and took over their empire. And that's what the Egyptians said. Never will that happen again. The foreign invaders come in and take over our land. So that's why the king said, let us deal wisely with them. Because he said, nah, never again. That's not going to happen. Because remember, that was one of the most embarrassing and most humiliating period in Egyptian history when the Hyksos ruled Egypt. They didn't like that thing, man. You understand? Every Egyptian dynasty was given a dynasty right after. But when the Hyksos ruled, the Egyptians said, nah, we're not part of that dynasty. They skipped that dynasty and said, we're the 17th dynasty of Egypt. They didn't take on that dynasty. They skipped that and said, we're the 17th dynasty of Egypt. Because the Hyksos ruled that 15th and 16th dynasty. And usually when you come in, you take over the next dynasty. But they said, nah, we don't have nothing to do with that dynasty. We're the 17th dynasty, and when we kick you out, we're going to become the 18th dynasty of Egypt. All right? And all the Egyptians hated that history when the Hyksos ruled. They didn't like that, man. That was embarrassing. Because the Egyptians became subject to foreign rulers. All right? So with that, I hope everybody have a better understanding. And I say shalom.
Shalom.